My presentation is about how taking oral contraceptives changes who you're attracted to and how that changes how happy you are in the relationship. The takeaway from the study I'm going to present is that women who meet their partner on oral contraceptives are less sexually satisfied, but more satisfied overall in their relationship. So if you're not on oral contraceptives, this is the normal hormone fluctuation we all read about. And there's this period, roughly days 10 to 14, when you have a jump in your hormones, and it's considered your most fertile period, or your periovular period. And it's really important evolutionarily because modern women have hundreds of these. But our ancestors only had like 10 or 15 because they were always pregnant or lactating because there was no form of birth control. So this fertile period and who we're attracted to during it is relatively new. So during this phase, we're attracted to genetically attractive men. What does that mean? It means they have more facial symmetry, they have more dissimilar MHC immune systems, so their immune systems are more different from ours to have the most protection for our offspring. They have lower voices, and they have more masculine faces. So for most women, during the fertile period, they look for these things more than they otherwise do. Why? Because a better genetic mate will have better genetic offspring. And during this period, all you care about is what your child is like. You're not looking for a long-term partner. And it's the same reason studies have shown women are the most likely to have extra pair population during their fertile period. Because all you want is the best genetic offspring. So what happens when you take oral contraceptives? This is the graph we just looked at of normal fluctuation. And this is the month if you take an oral contraceptive. The key thing here is that there is no variation. There's no moment when things peak. So you don't have that same fertile phase. So what does that mean for who you're attracted to? Studies have shown that women who are taking oral contraceptives no longer look for MHC dissimilar men during their fertile period. They look less for facial masculinity, and they don't look for facial symmetry. So women on oral contraceptives aren't looking for the same things as other women during their fertile period. So this study asks, how does changing who we're attracted to change how happy we are in the relationship? So it asked women in the United States, the Czech Republic, and other parts of the world, particularly the United Kingdom and Canada, how happy they were in their relationship and whether they were on oral contraceptives when they met their partner. So the way they did this was they had online questionnaires through social media or pregnancy sites and sites about raising children. Then they asked them to do a bunch of online surveys, we'll talk about more in a minute, and they didn't tell them what they were testing. They told them it had something to do with having children and reproducing and being married, but they didn't tell them it was about oral contraceptives, which is really interesting. So 2,519 women participated in this study. That's huge, and that's really exciting for a study of this size to look at this question. The average age was 37.3. That's because these women had at least one offspring, and they were talking about the biological father of their offspring. So these are very long-term relationships. So roughly 30% of them were separated. We'll talk more about how that breaks down if you were on oral contraceptives or if you weren't when you met the person. And roughly 40% of them were on oral contraceptives. So when we're comparing these two groups, people who were on contraceptives and people who weren't, it's important to know the groups were almost equal. So what did they ask these people? They asked them, how sexually satisfied are you? That's how many times a week do you have sex, how frequently do you orgasm, how much do you enjoy sex. They asked them about relationship satisfaction. How much do you like spending time with this person? Do you think they're smart? How often do you reject sex or have sex when you don't really want to? This is a way of asking women about sexual satisfaction without asking directly. Someone may not want to admit they're sexually dissatisfied, but if they're rejecting sex multiple times a week, it can be informative. And lastly, they asked, how attractive is your partner objectively? This also gets to sexual satisfaction, and it tells us something else about mate choice. So what did they find? The key finding here is that women who were taking oral contraceptives when they met their partner were less sexually satisfied than women who were not taking oral contraceptives when they met their partner. The opposite is true for relationships. Women who are on oral contraceptives were more satisfied with the relationship than women who are not on oral contraceptives. And lastly, for partner attractiveness, women on oral contraceptives found their partner less attractive than women who were not when they met their partner. So overall, women on oral contraceptives, when they meet their partner, were less sexually satisfied, but more satisfied overall, suggesting that their overall sense of the relationship was more important to them than sexual satisfaction. So rejecting sex or having sex when you don't want to is another way to look at how sexually satisfied you are. And you can see here that women who are on oral contraceptives reject sex more than women who are not, and have compliant sex more than women who are not. So this suggests women who met their partner on oral contraceptives and therefore chose different partners reject sex more and have sex when they don't want to more. It's important to note that they controlled for your general attitudes towards sex, your relationship satisfaction, and your current hormone state. So if you were pregnant, if you were on oral contraceptives now or not. This looks at separation rate. So this is a chi-square test, which can be a little bit confusing. So this is the number of people who separated, absolute number. And these white bars are how many you expect in each group, if the same percent of people were separating in each group, given the groups are different sizes. So for non-users, you expect about 450 people to separate, but 500 people separated, more than you expect. And for users, you expect about 300 people to separate, but only 250 separated. So if that doesn't make sense, another way to think of it is that 33% of non-users ended up separating, and less than 24% of users separated. So women who were on oral contraceptive when they met their partner were less likely to separate. The last result is relationship duration. If you did eventually split up, how long were you together? And this shows that oral contraceptive users were together on average 81 months, while non-users were only together 60 months. So users had relationships that lasted almost 2 years longer on average. So we see that these relationships last longer and they're more satisfied, even though they're less sexually satisfied. There are some limitations. It was a self-reported study that always leads to certain levels of bias or lack of honesty. The evolutionary reasons were not fully understood, and maybe that would have impacted the survey. They didn't look at multiple kinds of birth control. They set a limit for a threshold for what level of hormone they were looking for, but they didn't differentiate above that level. And again, with a lot of studies we've talked about, this is correlation, it's not causation. So further research could definitely compare different kinds of oral contraceptives and could hopefully find causation. Despite those limitations, the study suggests if you met your partner while on oral contraceptives, you had less sexual satisfaction, but you were less likely to separate, more likely to be happy with the relationship overall, and have a longer surviving relationship. So this overall was a good thing for these relationships. Changing oral contraceptives does change your hormones and change who you're attracted to, but it seems to long-term benefit these relationships. Thank you.